Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of On to the Next Quarter, where I bring to you individuals who have deeply inspired me and I hope can do the same for you. Over the last couple of years, being a young entrepreneur and finding my place in the world, I have really been thinking of one important question. What kind of leader do I want to be? Especially in today's world where the job market is fluctuating, technology is rising, and I feel that a lot of people are feeling unvalued and replaceable. And I feel that this question is more important now than it has ever been before. And this really got me thinking, what if the most profitable business isn't about control or efficiency, but instead about loving human beings, treating them with integrity and compassion? Today's guest is somebody who has continuously challenged these leadership positions, Mr. Atul Thakkar. Mr. Atul was born and raised in Bombay, India, and received his bachelor's in electrical engineering from the Indian Institute of Technology. At the age of 22, he moved to the United States and got his master's in electrical engineering along with an MBA. In 1984, he then co-founded and became the CEO of Atronica, a technological service company. Over the last 40 years, Atronica has expanded from over 5 employees to 85 employees. It has opened in 5 different locations and has reached revenues of over $80 million. Mr. Atul is somebody who continuously encourages individuals to step outside of the social structure of business and instead embrace a more holistic view of success. He encourages to integrate financial success with moral responsibility and power with compassion. And I truly feel that this sort of leadership is going to inspire a new generation of individuals, entrepreneurs, and leaders who will begin to operate from a place of purpose, integrity, and heart. Mr. Atul, thank you so much for trusting me, and it's such an honor.
You're welcome. Happy to be here.
So, over the past couple of years of getting to know you, and after reading your book and just learning about your life, I feel that you have lived a very full, adventurous, and purpose-driven life. And you've always lived it your way. And I guess for someone who has more experience than me and who has a couple extra decades on me, I was wondering what your thoughts are on purpose. If you feel that it's something that we're born with, if it's something that we learn through our life, or if it's something that we look back on and understand after we've put more of the puzzle pieces of life together.
I think it's both. It's both nature and nurture. You're born with some of it, and you develop it during your early lifetime, and you learn a few things. There are things you learn that are bad, and you don't want to do those, and then there are things you learn that are good, and you want to do those. So that's how it comes about. And I tell all young people that you be you, and that's what my email reads like, atoolubeyu@gmail.com. Because you have to be you. You can't be somebody else or try to be somebody else. That's problematic because you'll probably never succeed at it. But if you are being yourself, then you will succeed greatly, and more importantly, you'll be happy doing that.
So do you feel that there's a way to encompass your life's purpose, or in the end, it's just learning to be authentically yourself?
Oh, you can combine that
Mm,
with your life purpose,
mm,
and let's say you want to be an artist who loves ceramics and you want to make ceramic items, excuse me, um, and that gives you joy, then if you do it with love and caring, eventually you'll make money out of it
mm,
and you might become a famous artist one day.
yeah.
But if you try and say, okay, yeah, I know that's good, but I want to be uh, working in IT so that I can make a lot of money, you'll probably be unhappy doing that. And then what's what's the value to that? At the end of the year or your life, you say, what the hell did I do?
Yeah. Yeah. So, what do you feel that your purpose has been?
My purpose has been to show kindness to the world,
Mm,
to show kindness in the business world. I didn't know that as a young man, but then uh, in the book, when I wrote this book, it became very clear. So uh, the cover of the book has a Venn diagram,
mm-hmm.
which shows there are legal, ethical, and moral circles. And most companies operate legally and ethically. But I find morality something a lot more than ethics,
Mm,
or definitely different than ethics in many cases, because ethics can very often be Judeo Christian ethic in America,
mm-hmm.
or if you are in a Muslim country, it would be a different set of ethics.
Mm,
But morality is morality. If somebody falls down on the street, do you help that person without worrying about, oh, he's going to sue me if I help him and something goes wrong?
yeah.
So those kind of simple things
Yeah.
that I feel one has to be moral. And yeah, you may suffer because of that occasionally, but you got to do it.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. And for people who don't know you or haven't read your book yet, what made you start the company Atronica in the first place, and what is it all about?
Right. So I used to uh, work for mid-sized company in the Chicagoland area, uh, where I learned a few good things about how to treat people. And then I was in the Washington, D.C., Maryland area, and I worked for a larger corporation. And that's where I learned what not to be, how not to treat employees.
Mm,
On one hand, you are telling everybody that there are not going to be any layoffs. And then in a private meeting with the top brass, you say, okay, we're going to lay off 100 people. Uh, that kind of stuff.
yeah.
If you're going to lay off people, then be upfront about it.
Mm-hmm.
So there were many such things. And I personally have a theory about American football.
Okay.
Okay. Um, so I don't call it a sport, I call it a game.
Mm,
Uh, because unlike soccer, for example, in soccer you hit the ball and it goes into the goal or doesn't, but you're not stopping anybody else. So in the American football, the focus is on stopping a whole bunch of your opponents
mm-hmm.
so that your man can go and goal the ball. And that's what happens in the larger corporations, that people are not helping you, but they are trying to stop you from progressing. There's less of a teamwork. And so I didn't like that. And I thought, okay, I want to start a business where I can apply my thoughts and my ideas about how to treat people and how
Yeah.
to treat them with kindness and love.
Mm, mm. And then what did the business entail? Because I think it's very interesting because I guess my whole life I was like, oh, I want to help people, right? So I thought, okay, I need to be a doctor to help people. And then now I'm like, okay, let me try inspiring people through the podcast or through my way of talking. But I realized this was very unique in the way that you ran your business, but also being a completely tech based business. And so I never thought of combining the two because I realized that your whole essence and your whole core is when you're talking about morals, ethics, and values, is that that's who you are every single day. And it doesn't matter what the business is, it doesn't matter what you're doing in life. What you bring into each one of those spaces. And so I was just curious if you could elaborate a little bit more about what your company did and how it's grown over the past couple of years.
Right. So in the corporate world, I had a colleague named Carol Cornwell, who is also a co-author of the book, and she and I would go for lunches and talk about if this was my company, this is how I would do it. The different events that happened in the corporation, and she would make notes on paper napkins at restaurants, and it eventually became a business plan. And then the question was, okay, we're going to start a business where we will apply all these principles, but what business is it going to be?
Okay.
So we are both technical, analytical, and I have two engineering degrees. And so getting into a business that was not technical would not be challenging either.
Yeah.
So we started as a retail computer store in 1984 in the Washington, D.C. Area, where we started applying these principles. And we were one of the first retail stores in the country, I would say, that said, okay, no smoking. Now, in those days, you could smoke into any department store or anywhere, they would have ashtrays everywhere. And we said, no, we're not going to keep ashtrays. And there would be customers who would come in with a cigarette in their hand and smoking, and we would nicely request them to go out and smoke. And most would do that. Some refused to do it and said, then I'm not going to buy from you. Well, it's sorry if you feel that way, but that's the way we are. And today in America, you cannot smoke almost anywhere.
Yeah.
So I take credit for changing
Yeah.
that. But it's always like it's throw a stone in a peaceful lake and it creates the ripples, and it's that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Small changes,
Small changes.
like a domino effect.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. And coming back to the cover of your book, which you mentioned,
Hmm.
and there was something in this book, I think Sister Jenna, maybe in the foreword, wrote it that I really loved this line. It said, it's not about renouncing profitability or ambition, but about integrating purpose with profit. And I think that your company sits in the intersection between legal, ethical, and moral values to create its core humane companies. But why do you think that a large part of society believes that if you're a good human being, you can't be a successful individuals?
Because success is defined as money.
Mm.
And more successful you are is defined as how much more money do you have. So in business schools and any such training sessions, the emphasis is never on ethics or morality. It's always on how do you increase your profitability? How do you increase your income? How do you increase? So it's all about dollars.
Yeah.
And the Wall Street demands that you have growth quarter to quarter. Your share price is going to depend upon that. So companies do all kinds of maneuvering and tricks to show numbers that sometimes are not real, and so that their share prices go up. Uh, in my company, we've never focused on that kind of growth. The growth has happened organically, but there are many years when the sales have gone down. In 2021, we did 100 million in revenue. This year it'll be 62. And it doesn't really matter
Yeah.
because that's not what we are focused on. Are we keeping our people employed? Are they able to put bread on the table? That's my primary concern. I'm the primary owner of the company. I make a lot of money, but laying off people to increase my profitability is not a concept that I like.
Yeah. So these type of morals and values that are very strong to who you are, do you think that this is something we're born with or it can be instilled in people over time?
As I said earlier, I think it's both.
Mm.
Uh, you are born with some of it. Your family, the way you were brought up, the way you were taught how to live life, has definitely an impact on it. So, yeah, I was born into a simple middle class family where being honest and truthful about everything was required.
Mm.
So that's how I run my life. That's how I run my business. Um, and I go to sleep at night without any problem.
Yeah. What do you think are they can be instilled over the course of the life? I feel I agree with you on that. But then what do you feel are the biggest obstacles that people face in actually making that shift or implementing it? You know, especially when they see the world working in one particular way. I mean, I've often been met with like, "Oh, Shweta, that's unrealistic," or I used to think like that when I was younger, but the world doesn't work that way. And for me, it's something that I can't compromise on. Like, I don't want to see the world in that way. And even if it is working in that way, I want to make sure that at least I can make one small change. But I feel like it's hard for everyone to take that stand. And so I was just curious, what obstacles do you think really hinder people from doing that?
Well, the obstacles are the media, um, business schools, and people generally who are close to you are going to discourage you. So you got to find the people who are like minded and who will encourage you to do what you feel like doing so that you can be you.
Yeah.
And that's the fundamental difference. Because, yeah, there'll always be people who say, "You stupid, what the hell are you doing it?" And I've been told that enough number of times.
Yeah.
And, but I do what I want to do.
Yeah. So in your book, you talk about the triad, your brother, Neil
Mm-hmm.
Tucker, Carol, and you.
Yes.
And speaking of people and finding people who allow you to be you, how do you go about finding partners who align with your vision, align with your morals and values? And I saw you had the 12-step outline that you guys have created for the for how you want to run your business, the foundation of it, basically. And how do you make sure that it's something that stays upheld through the course of time? Because 40 years is a long time. And I also loved when you were talking about the fact that you guys never fought. You had disagreements, but you never fought. And you always came back to those set of rules that you guys had for one another. So I'm curious how, for somebody like me, how can we go about finding aligned individuals and how do you share that mutual
So
interest?
you have two questions here. So the first one, how do you find the people?
Yeah.
They come to you.
Okay.
And you have to recognize that this is the person with whom I resonate, and this is the person with whom I don't resonate. And be clear about it to yourself. And don't say, "Oh, I have to have this as my partner, although I don't resonate with him or her."
Mm.
You don't have to do that. So you find the people and the universe will send the right people to you. You to recognize that you're resonating with that person.
Yeah.
Um, as far as not fighting, um, fighting happens because of selfishness, which is that, hey, I want more than you. If you and I are partners in a business and you, or you're taking more than I'm taking and things like that, and we can fight over that. Or we can say, I have a set of, I have a point of view and you have another set of point of view. And both are different, and that's very important because we don't want yes men in the ownership.
Yeah.
We want different opinions. So you argue your point out
Mm.
loudly if you want.
Mm.
Nothing wrong with that. We used to go to a diner in Virginia called Silver Diner, and we used to sit there at a corner table, and we three would loudly argue out, and the managers knew us, and but we were not fighting.
Okay.
We were just expressing our viewpoints, and
Yeah.
then each person would say why their viewpoint is better,
Mm.
and then we would come to a conclusion and saying, okay, what Carol is saying makes the most sense. Therefore, that's what we're going to do.
Okay.
Okay, so that's not fighting; that's debating
Mm.
and coming up with a what might be the best solution.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And along with morals, I felt that as I was reading your book, that trust was one of the biggest foundational pieces that shaped your business. And in story 5 of your book, you mentioned an employee who started taking extra inventory and started selling those computers from the back of their truck. And because of that, as a business, you were in a tough spot during that between making up for the costs of the inventory, paying off the loans, and making sure that you're still paying your employees. And instead of laying off any of your employees to cut costs, you made a really bold decision as the CEO to cut your salary by 100%.
Mhm.
You cut the salary of the other two owners by 50% and cut the salary of all the managers by 25% and the salary of the hourly workers by 15%. And then on top of all of that, you even promised to pay everyone back the amount that was cut, and you fulfilled your promise in the following couple of years. So, this is a really unique stance that I think most, I don't want to generalize, but a lot of entrepreneurs um, may not have the courage to take a stand on. And I was curious how you had the foresight during that time that this would be the best decision for the future of the company.
Yeah, so it was in a way simple decision. So to look at it, saying, okay, we can declare bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
That's one option. We can lay off a whole bunch of people. That's another option. But then, because we had one bad person in the group who was stealing, does that mean everyone else has to be punished for that? Okay. And in fact, it was another employee who found this out that the theft was occurring.
Mm.
So, why should that person and others lose their jobs because they were all honest? Um, so, we said, what do we have to do? What can we do to make this a going corporation? And we had at that point, in that particular example, negative equity. And within 1 year, we turned it around completely by making these changes. Now, being the CEO, I'm highly paid and I have enough in the bank to put bread on the table.
Mm-hmm.
But somebody making lower wages can't necessarily afford to do that.
Yeah.
And so when you treat the people with kindness, And in that particular story, what I what you didn't mention was that we had a cleaning lady who at that time was on minimum wage. She was the only one on minimum wage. And I didn't cut any of her pay.
Yeah.
And she found out from others that everyone had taken some cut. And she came crying to my office and saying, "Why didn't you include me?" So that's the love coming back to you from the kindness and love you show. And so she said, reduce my pay by 25 cents an hour, and I want to be part of the team.
Wow.
And I did that reluctantly. And so, we have 99% of the people who are really good and they care. Uh, and for the love and kindness you show, you get that back 100 times.
Yeah.
And to me, that's life worth living, not having a billion in my bank.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like it becomes really hard for people, like you said, um, it, when their trust is broken. It's almost like they're punishing either the people or the people that are to come, right? New employees. Either there's limitations or restrictions. There is a lot more distrust. And for people that have experienced that kind of pain or are afraid that their love and compassion will be taken advantage of or abused, what would you say to them, and how do you rebuild trust within yourself and within your company?
Well, for those whose trust is broken, and I'm assuming you're talking about in another company or organization,
Yeah.
if you find that that's the case, leave that place. It's
Mm.
that simple. And go to another place. And there are many, many companies that operate from trust.
Yeah.
Ours is not the only one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the only one who wrote a book like that. But so leave if you're not happy with the way you're being treated, not being trusted or loved, or there's no kindness. Leave that place. Why are you sticking to it? Don't say, "Oh, I have to earn a buck." Well, happiness is equally important.
Yeah. But what about for somebody who's running a company? Somebody like you in your position where, your trust in somebody was questioned. How do you continue to move forward and not let that hinder you from trusting the next person that's coming into your office?
Right. Um, so one thing we did actually is we built up systems that
Okay.
frequently checked inventory.
Mm.
Okay. Okay, we had a flaw in the system, and most companies do their inventories once a year. And if there are losses, they will know for a year. So
Oh,
we now check our inventory every month and sometimes in between.
okay.
So that's one way of doing. That doesn't mean I distrust my people,
Mm-hmm.
but that also prevents mistakes from happening because you're checking it
Right.
frequently.
Right.
So that's one way of doing it. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And at Atronica, you pay 100% of the cost for medical insurance for the employees and 100% of the cost for medical insurance for the entire family. And if one of the family members is already insured and they don't want the insurance, you pay them a stipend. And it's one thing to fully pay for your employees, but what was your thought process when it came to extending that same benefit to the rest of the family?
I fundamentally believe that medical insurance is a human right in this particular country, which is a rich country.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, medical insurance currently for almost everybody is dependent upon their jobs. And then if you are hit with a condition, suddenly you have cancer, something you couldn't have predicted, and you lose your job, you're losing your insurance. That's
Mm.
when you need your insurance the most, and you lose it. And so everyone should have insurance, and that's my fundamental belief.
Mm-hmm.
So same, uh, I believe that it's not only the employee, but the employee's family should have the medical insurance fully paid for. Now, an employee goes home, is supported by his or her family, uh, and for the employee to come to work with a fresh mind and enthusiasm, being the family in a good shape. So if his kid has a medical condition and knows that it's being taken care of medically, when he comes to work, he's not worried about how am I going to handle this. So he's focused on the work. So uh, to me, that's why it's very important that everybody is covered and they don't have to pay for that. And the reason for giving stipend is that there are employees who say, my spouse has insurance through his or her company, and we like that insurance better than what Atronica is offering.
Mm.
And we say that's perfectly fine. You have a choice. As long as you certify that you are insured medically, we are okay with that. Um, and we give you a stipend to make sure that you're not double insuring, because some people have a tendency to keep that insurance plus get another insurance from Atronica, and we are unnecessarily paying double premiums,
Yeah.
which really doesn't help anybody. But if you have an insurance that you like better, fine. We give you a stipend and we don't pay for your insurance. Everybody's happy.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. And that kind of goes right into my next question about story 8, I believe, about converting tragedy. It was about the boy Eric that you mentioned. And I mean, each one of your stories, as I kept going, it was really touching and inspiring and just showed who you are to your core. But this one really, really got to me. And I was wondering, instead of me sharing it, if you would share the story.
Well, basically, Eric, Eric Jr. actually, being living in the D.C. area where it's sometimes dangerous, was hit by a drive-by shooting, and was his father, who was an employee, was therefore distraught and unavailable for a while, and we decided that we're going to take care of him. But it was more than me deciding. Other employees decided, saying, hey, we're going to do his duties uh, because we are a family. One family member is in trouble, and we're going to help him out. And so we are going to do some of his duties, and we'll make this work until he can come back to work.
Yeah. Yeah. And you gave him unlimited PTO. And like you
Right.
mentioned, you said that everyone was willing to step up for him. And it almost took his son about like a year of recovery and
Yes.
rehabilitation before he was able to go back to school. So then was he still in and out of the office during that time, or was it
Occasionally he would be in,
okay?
okay, but not a lot.
Okay, okay. And then the best part of all of it was, one, that the son recovered. Two, that you allowed him to return back to the same managerial position. And in the end, you said that he came back so much stronger and so much more loyal,
Hmm.
right? And it just shows that having that kind of support. I think we often think that, okay, family members and friends are supposed to be that support for you, but having that in your company, you're not only happy when you go home, but you spend most of your day there as well. So you're happy over there and you feel that you have people you can fall back on, people that you can trust. And like you said, when you're in dire need of this medical insurance or when you need the income and when unforeseen circumstances happen, that's when most people end up losing their jobs. And then it just adds to the stress of everything that's going on. So if it were up to me and I was president, I would say that this should be a required thing for every company. But I think it's such um, a beautiful, unique, and strong decision that you've made. And I think that it's
And I think the government should insure everybody, and it shouldn't be on the companies. That's another opinion I have.
yeah.
But one more thing about Eric's story that a couple of years ago when I was visiting the office and I saw Eric, and I when I go there these days, I'm mostly retired, but I go there and I hug people and talk to people and I saw Eric, and he had a beard, and it was turning gray.
Oh, wow.
And I joked about it, and I said, "Hey, Eric, you're getting old." And he says, "Yeah, I'm 52 years old." And Atul, I didn't expect to live this long, having grown up in this DC neighborhood. I didn't expect to live this long, but you took a chance on a 19-year-old and hired me. And now he's a manager of operations earning in six figures.
Wow. Wow. Mhm. You also, speaking of hiring him at 19, uh, what I thought was really interesting was how you don't have an HR department and how most of your employees stay with you for
Ever.
decades, for decades.
Yeah.
And how back in those days, there's no social media, there's no like advertising, and on top of that, you didn't have an HR company. So how did you find your long-lasting employees?
Well, the first thing we would do is we would announce it in our weekly meeting that we are looking for a technician or a warehouse person or whatever. And if you know anybody, just refer that person to us. And the biggest advantage that we found is that an employee would only recommend somebody that they were sure would work out and wouldn't make that employee look bad.
Yeah.
So the HR job was done by the employee in actually selecting a candidate.
Yeah.
And that's how we found most of the employees. We believe in nepotism. We had hired 5 sons from Eric's mother's family.
Oh,
So,
wow. Wow.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
So and 2 are still there. So
Wow. I like that. Believe in nepotism. We don't hear that
I
often.
know. What's wrong with it?
Yeah.
And I don't know why people are against nepotism. Nepotism is okay. As long as you have your rules in place as to what you can do and cannot do and the person's ability,
Yeah.
why not?
Yeah.
And I've had people say, yeah, I have a brother that would qualify, but I'm not bringing him in because he's not going to fit here.
Wow.
So that's
Wow.
simple.
Yeah. So they're already sifting it for you. And there's a lot more trust, I feel like, word of mouth. Like, even nowadays, I feel like if I get a recommendation from somebody, from like a friend or somebody that I really trust, then I'm 100% going with their recommendation
Mhm.
because they know me rather than me
Exactly.
going and finding and searching. Like,
Mhm.
they know what would serve my interests the best. Yeah.
Exactly.
And then when it comes to employees and not letting go of employees during tough times in the company and individuals loving working with you, wanting to stay in your company for decades. Was there ever time, besides maybe the thief, where like you had to let go of employees, and what would be the reason for that?
Um, the only time that if there was some misbehavior by an employee that I've had to let one or
Huh.
two go that way,
Yeah.
um, or somebody who is found to be taking advantage of the situation. Uh, and then once a couple of years ago, when our business changed significantly and we had too many of technicians on hand, and uh, we had to let three of them go
Mm,
because there was no work for them.
right.
So that was a different situation. It was not a money related thing, but if they're just sitting there doing nothing,
Yeah.
those kind of things.
Yeah, yeah. So you never felt that there was anybody who wasn't doing their job properly though. Like,
Oh, I've had a few of those.
oh, okay. Okay.
One example I'll give you that is to me the strangest example is an employee we hired this time through uh, a company that supplies people, and what are they called? Anyway, uh, and we interviewed that candidate. We liked him. Everything was good on paper and interview. And we started training that person on the technician job. He already knew some of it, but we had to train him on what we do.
Mhm.
And having worked there for a couple of months, and by the way, during that time, he was not uh, being punctual and such. And we knew that. And we said, okay, we're going to figure that out. And then at one time, he wanted to take 2 weeks of PTO, and he hadn't earned the PTO yet. And I asked him, I said, why do you want the PTO now? Is something going on?
Mhm.
And his answer was, no, the only thing going on is that I am, I want to work for Amazon, and I want at night, and they want to train me, but the training only happens during daytime. So I'm going to take off from you, and then I'm going to work at night at Amazon. And I said, goodbye.
Oh my gosh.
So you know the gall,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. The boldness that some people have. I guess at least he was honest.
And for in the way he was talking, he found nothing wrong with it.
That's crazy. Wow. Oh gosh. That's so funny. But as I'm concluding this episode, there's a few things that come to mind. And one of them is going back to Eric Jr., you said?
Hmm.
Eric Jr.'s story and the way that you responded as a leader, as a human, as somebody who cares. And I was wondering if that was a response to your own personal experiences that you have been through when you were younger and you were going through a really difficult time. You ended up being a single father and taking care of your newborn, and at the same time needing to put food on the table. And I was wondering if you felt supported in that way by your company or the people around you, where you felt like, okay, I can take care of what's happening at home.
It's a great question. I don't know the answer
Okay.
to that, but yeah. When my wife died at a very young age, and during the childbirth of my second son, um, it it was a terrible time. And one thing I've come to realize that terrible things happen to everybody.
Mm.
is just different as to what that is. And you don't know at what age it's going to happen, but it does happen to everybody, and they have to come out of it. And it's not a bad thing because it's such difficulties that make you stronger.
Mm.
You learn from it. And similarly, business failures or failure in college or school, you learn from that and you become more powerful, more successful. So, failure is not a bad thing. Such disasters are not necessarily a bad thing. At that point, of course, you feel sad and horrified as to what the hell am I going to do next, you know?
Yeah.
So, to answer your question, maybe that's what helped me decide on the Eric situation. But uh, I've always been empathetic to people. That's my nature.
Yeah.
So I tell people the whole book that I wrote can be summarized in 2 words: love and kindness.
Mm.
So
Yeah. And recently, the other day, when I was chatting with you at our coffee shop at Frost Me, you told me a story about how if somebody could, you summarized the book in 2 words, but if somebody could summarize your life in 1 word, it would be resilience.
right.
And my question to you is what builds resilience? What makes a person resilient?
I don't know the answer to that. I guess you're either resilient or not. um, uh, Things happen, and then are you going to give up at some point?
Mm.
And you say, no, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to move forward. Uh, and so, to give again the example of when my wife died, I could have said, "Oh, the world has come to an end. I'm giving up, and what's going to happen to me, and all that." And I said, "Okay, I'm working in this corporation. I've been there only 6 months. It's a new job. I'm still being tested. I don't know if I'm going to keep the job or not. But I have medical insurance, which I need for myself and my newborn baby and my 3-year-old son. And I need to keep the job. I need to put bread on the table. And I'm going to just say, okay, I got to do it one step in forward, one step in front of the other."
Yeah.
And you decide that, and that translate as resilience.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I learned so much from this conversation and from reading your book. And this is going to be available at in the college? In the
Yeah, this is available on Amazon,
Yes.
and it's the story about why I wrote the book is
Okay.
that Illinois Institute of Technology, these they call themselves Illinois Tech. Their chairman of the board had come to visit me some years ago, and I told him some of these stories, and he said, "Yeah, you should write a book." And
Mm.
I said, I don't know about that. And a year later, the president of the university came, and we talked about the same kind of things. And he said, "No, no, write the book, and I'll make it a required reading."
Wow.
So now I had no choice but to write the book. So we wrote the book, and they were already purchased 24 copies, and I hope they make it a required reading.
Yeah.
So that's why the book happened.
Yeah. Wow. Well, whether it's a required reading for them or not, I think everyone should read this book. I think it just gives a beautiful perspective on life. I think it shows that things can be done in a different way, out of the box thinking, and to stay resilient and never give up. I think that's one of the biggest lessons I always learned from you. and to stay adventurous and to have fun with life.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so those are my biggest takeaways. And you always inspire me as a young individual to make sure that I am living my life to the fullest. And I'm so grateful to have met you, to have you in my life, and to show me that purpose is not something that I need to chase. I think that's something that I was doing for a while, but it's how I lead my life every single day and in every moment, and it'll come to me. So,
Definitely.
yeah,
All
thank you
right.
so much.
Thank you.